She had money, fame, and a picture-perfect life. But behind the glamorous lifestyle, posted on social media, was a tangled web of resentment and danger that ended in one of Hong Kong's most horrifying murders. This story rocked Hong Kong, which is a city known for safety, wealth, and order. A kind, loyal woman with seemingly close-knit relationships encountered its far more sinister side. If you enjoy my content, please make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Now, let's lift the thin veil. At 28, Abby Choi was a rising star, starting to find success in her modeling career. A socialite, highly popular on social media sites like Instagram. She lived the kind of life people scroll past with envy, posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, dining in high-end restaurants, being chauffeured to fashion shows. Abby wasn't just a self-professed style icon. She had an eye for fashion that people seemingly loved, with hundreds of thousands of people following her every move. She had featured on magazines like Vogue and worked with large international brands. Just a week before she vanished in February 2023, she was featured on the cover of L'Officiel Monaco, which is a large French fashion magazine. But beyond the curated posts and runway shots, there was more to Abby. Even though she came from wealth, her friends said she was down to earth, generous, and deeply kind. She even co-founded an animal rescue group. According to those who knew her, Abby was someone who seemed to genuinely care about everyone around her. At just 18, she married a man named Alex Kuang. They had 2 sons together, but the marriage didn't last and they divorced just a few years later. In 2016, Abby started a relationship with Chris Tam, whose father owned a popular casual restaurant chain in Hong Kong. The couple ended up having 2 children, bringing Abby's total to 4. What's remarkable about the situation, though, is how close she remained to her first husband, Alex, and his family after the split. She didn't just stay friendly, she supported them, and she supported them lavishly. She bought a luxury 4-bedroom apartment in Kadoorie Hill, one of the most expensive parts of Hong Kong. She registered the property in Alex's father's name, reportedly to avoid stamp duty tax, but regardless, she allowed the Kuangs to live there. She also helped her former brother-in-law, Anthony Kuang, buy another separate home. At one point, the 2 of them even ran a business together, and to keep him employed, she hired him as her personal driver. They were close enough that he affectionately referred to her as Sis on Instagram. Abby's generosity didn't stop with property or financial help. She went on holidays with her current in-laws and the Kuangs. This level of connection with her ex-husband's family might seem strange to a lot of people, but according to her friends, Abby said she just wanted to take care of everyone in her life. From the outside, it looked like Abby was thriving in both business and personal relationships. Her public profile painted a picture of someone generous, but some would argue, too generous. And that generosity, that closeness with the Kuangs, is where things started to take a dark turn. Because beneath the surface of the seemingly peaceful arrangement was a growing undercurrent of resentment and a dangerous level of entitlement. Her former father-in-law, Kuang Cao, had once had a career in medicine, more specifically as a surgeon. He had also once worked as a police officer, serving in the force's medical division. He retired in 2005 and had even received a long service medal in 2001. But that respectable image hid something deeply unsettling. Later allegations claimed that he hadn't simply retired. He had been quietly forced out of the police service after being accused of sexually assaulting a woman during an investigation. It's important to note that the case never went to court, but the shadow and suspicions of a police cover-up remained. There were suspicions that they had quietly settled with money the family didn't have. Then there was his son, Abby's ex-husband, Alex Kuang. On paper, he seemed like an ordinary man with a complicated family history, but prosecutors later revealed that Alex had actually been wanted by police since 2015. He was allegedly involved in a massive 5 million Hong Kong dollar gold scam, conning young men into bogus investment schemes. That's equivalent to about $630,000 US. Alex was also accused of stealing loads of gold items, necklaces, bracelets, bars. While Abby was supporting the family financially, he had been dodging arrests. And it wasn't just Alex who came with legal baggage. His brother, Anthony, Abby's personal driver, was knee-deep in civil lawsuits over unpaid debts. Their mother, Jenny Lee, had already been declared bankrupt after losing millions of Hong Kong dollars in various investments. So when you take a step back and look at the Kuang family as a whole, a pattern starts to emerge. Debt, scams, bankruptcy, lawsuits. One financial mess after another, wrapped in a web of desperation and questionable decisions. In some cases, outright criminal behavior. Abby had kept them afloat so far, but it also placed her directly in the path of their desperation. In 2023, Abby decided to sell the Kadoorie Hill apartment, the luxury flat she had bought in the Kuang's name years earlier. But the plan wasn't to throw them out on the street. She'd made it clear she would help them find a new place and assist them financially. Still, the idea of losing that property didn't sit well with the family, and it likely had to do with the property's high value. As soon as this was brought up, her former father-in-law, Kuang Cao, reacted violently. According to reports, he was so furious he allegedly threatened to kill Abby if she went through with the sale. Despite the threat, Abby didn't back down. She kept looking for a new place for the family to live and sought legal advice to proceed with selling the apartment. But Kuang Cao wasn't one to make empty threats. According to investigators, the property dispute triggered him to draw up a calculated and horrifying plan for Abby. In early February 2023, Kuang Cao rented a ground floor flat in Long Mei, a quite picturesque seaside village in Tai Po, far from the dense sprawl of the city. The secluded, out-of-the-way location would turn out to be central to everything that followed. Fast forward to Tuesday, February the 21st. That morning, Anthony picked Abby up from the apartment in Kadoorie Hill at around 2:15 p.m. The plan was to pick one of her children up from school, but as they approached Lion Rock Tunnel, which is a tunnel bored through a granite hill to connect the old Kowloon area of the city with the new territories, the car came to a stop. Alex Kuang, Abby's ex-husband, got in, and that was the last time Abby was seen alive. It's believed the brothers attacked her in the car. Later that day, when Abby failed to collect her child, friends immediately knew something was wrong. Abby was never out of touch. She was constantly on her phone, managing work, posting on social media, keeping up with her kids. For her to suddenly go silent was completely out of character. She was reported missing almost immediately, and an official police report was filed by her friends on February the 22nd. When police reached out to the Kuang family, Alex, Anthony, and Kuang Cao, they were met with a web of lies and mostly obfuscation. According to the superintendent leading the case, the family gave false and misleading statements to try to throw investigators off track, from things like telling her she was traveling to saying she needed time off. And for a couple of days, it worked. Critical time was lost. But the police pressed on with the investigation after pressure from her husband, Chris, and her friends. They pulled GPS records from the car. They scoured CCTV footage. Slowly, they began to reconstruct the family's movements and cut through the lies. They noticed something highly suspicious. Alex and Anthony Kuang had gone to Junk Bay Cemetery, a graveyard on the eastern slopes of the Chiokang Wanshan Hill, the day after she was reported missing. So just 3 days after Abby vanished, on Friday, February the 24th, police executed a raid on the Lung Mi flat that Kuang Cao had rented out. What they found inside was horrifying. The flat was practically empty without any furniture. It wasn't set up to be a home, but as Superintendent Alan Chung described it, as a macabre butcher shop. It was sterile, cold, and clinical. The walls and floors were lined with sailcloth, deliberately set up to prevent blood from splattering everywhere. Their room would not be too different from what the kill rooms in the TV show Dexter looked like. And then there were the tools, laid out methodically, tools clearly intended for dismembering a human body. There was a meat grinder, an electric saw, cleavers, 2 different types of hammers, face shields, long raincoats, and on a shelf, Abby's purple handbag. But the most horrifying discovery was in the kitchen. Inside the fridge were 2 dismembered legs. On the stove, 2 large soup pots were still boiling. Inside were carrots, green radishes, and what appeared to be human remains. police immediately arrested 3 members of the Kuang family at the Lung Mei house: the father, Kuang Cao, the brother, Anthony Kuang, and the mother, Jenny Lee. But one person was missing. Alex Kuang, Abby's ex-husband, was nowhere to be found. By the time the police arrived, he had vanished, and that immediately raised the alarm. All the evidence from the house was seized for forensic analysis, which confirmed the unthinkable. Inside one of the pots, investigators found a human skull and several ribs, and all the body parts were found to be Abby's. There was a large hole in the back of the skull, what police believe was the fatal blow. The working theory was that Abby had been struck on the back of the head, possibly while still in the car, and the flat was used to deal with the aftermath, with some parts dumped elsewhere. With 3 suspects in custody, one major question remained: where was Alex Kuang? Citywide manhunt kicked off. News of Abby Choi's brutal killing and dismemberment spread like wildfire, not just across Hong Kong, but throughout mainland China, Taiwan, and beyond. Social media lit up. The story dominated headlines, gripped forums, and flooded feeds. Due to her large online platforms, news spread pretty fast, and it was electrifying in the worst possible way. A lot of people, from government-assigned agents to web sleuths, were looking for Alex. Abby's friends and loved ones rallied immediately. One of her close friends, Choi, offered a 2 million Hong Kong dollar reward for information leading to Alex's arrest. Chris Tam's family contributed more. People wanted justice, and they wanted it fast. That financial and social pressure would pay off. On Saturday, February the 25th, police got a tip. Alex was allegedly planning to flee Hong Kong by speedboat. It sounded like something out of a movie, but it was real. Authorities tracked him to the Tung Chung development pier on Lantau Island. When they intercepted him, he had 500,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash and luxury watches, worth an estimated 4 million. He was ready to vanish, and was literally on the speedboat with the assets in hand. But it got a bit deeper when police discovered that Alex wasn't acting alone. In fact, he had help. Along with him, police arrested a 41-year-old man named Lam Shun, an employee of a yacht rental company. He was allegedly promised 100,000 Hong Kong dollars to help Alex leave by boat and was aware of everything. And he wasn't the only accomplice. A 29-year-old woman named Irene Punho Yin, described as a friend of Alex's, was arrested later across the border in Shenzhen, China. She too was accused of helping with his escape plan. Then there was a connection back to Kuang Cao. Police also arrested a 47-year-old woman known as Mrs. Ng Chi Wing, who was allegedly Kuang Cao's mistress. According to investigators, she helped him rent the Lung Mei flat, the murder site, and may have secured another apartment used as a safe house for Alex before his failed escape. Again, it was alleged she was aware of the overall details. What began as a contained family crime was now spreading outward. A widening circle of alleged accomplices were caught up in the orbit of Abby Choi's horrific murder, and it was likely all for money. Even after all the arrests, the tragedy wasn't over. Key parts of Abby's body were still missing. Her torso, her hands. Despite massive search efforts, they were never recovered. At one point, over 100 officers were deployed. The Flying Tigers, Hong Kong's elite police tactical unit, joined the search along with police dogs. They combed through the Junk Bay Chinese Permanent Cemetery and a nearby landfill. Days of searching turned up nothing more. The sheer scale of the operation showed how seriously the authorities took the case. The resources poured in reflected the level of shock and horror the crime had generated across the city. But as someone who's covered many such cases, one thing I must say is that Abby's wealth and social standing undeniably amplified this case. While every investigation deserves full effort, I doubt a similar level of police cooperation would extend to a less prominent victim. On February the 27th, just days after Abby's remains were discovered, Alex Kuang, his father, Kuang Cao, and his brother, Anthony Kuang, were formally charged with murder. Jenny Lee, the mother, was charged with perverting the course of justice for allegedly destroying the evidence. All were denied bail and remanded in custody as further investigations continued. While they all still await sentencing for Abby's murder, Alex also got 3.5 years of jail time for his other crimes. Kuang Cao's alleged mistress, Mrs. Ng Chi Wing, was charged with assisting an offender, specifically for helping him rent properties. Lam Shun, the yacht worker, and Irene Punho Yin, the friend arrested in Shenzhen, were each charged with conspiring to assist Alex's escape, and in June 2025, both were sentenced to 6 months in prison. Pun was also subjected to a travel ban as it was believed she had plans to escape to Vietnam. Under Hong Kong law, murder carries a mandatory life sentence. The city abolished the death penalty in 1993, so there's no possibility of execution, just life behind bars, and many see that as fitting for the Kuang family. Because the murder of Abby Choi wasn't just brutal, it shattered the illusion of safety in a city that prides itself on having one of the lowest murder rates in the world. Public reaction to Abby Choi's murder was instant and overwhelming. People began drawing comparisons to Parasite, the 2019 South Korean film. The themes hit close to home, a less wealthy family clinging to and exploiting a much wealthier figure. The city watched in disbelief as the details came out, each one more chilling than the last. And underneath it all was the story of a young woman who tried to help everyone around her and ultimately paid for it with her life. People also wondered why the family was planning to eat Abby, but the reason was either never discovered or it wasn't shared with the public. Public reaction to Abby Choi's murder was instant and overwhelming. Abby's followers responded with rage. Much of it was directed at Anthony Kuang's social media accounts, since he'd been so publicly involved in Abby's life. People felt betrayed and horrified. The case also reopened old wounds for Hong Kong, bringing back memories of the city's most gruesome murders. There was a 2013 case of Henry Chow and his friend Hui Lang, who murdered Chow's parents and stored their dismembered bodies in a fridge. And of course, the infamous Hello Kitty murder from 1999, in which a woman's skull was sewn into a Hello Kitty plush toy after her violent murder. Still one of the most haunting crimes in Hong Kong's history. Now, Abby's story sits alongside these cases that linger in the public consciousness. Amid all the outrage, people also remembered Abby for who she was. Her Instagram, once filled with fashion and travel, was flooded with tributes and condolences which carry on to this day. In the village of Lung Mei, residents were so shaken by what occurred there that they held a Taoist ceremony to calm Abby's spirit. Because how does a community even begin to process something so horrifying, happening right in their backyard? It leaves a scar, a deep one. This case is a stark reminder of how appearances can deceive, how a life filled with wealth, elegance, and generosity can be shattered by greed and resentment. Abby Choi gave freely her time, her money, her care to those she thought cared for her, and what she received in return was betrayal, brutality, and unimaginable violence. And in the end, it all seemed to spiral from a property dispute. It leaves us with hard questions. What do we really know about the people closest to us? If you like my content, then please make sure you like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time.